Welcome to the other side of the coin, where we add new perspectives for you to make more powerful decisions in your financial world. Today's guest is Zak Smith. Zak co-founded his financial services firm over 13 years ago, and over the years, he and his team have scaled up, and they are continuing to grow to this day. Being a business owner himself, who also has the specialty of being a business exit planner, Zak can relate to his business owner clients as he understands the trials, tribulations, and celebrations of what it's like to be a business owner. Starting out, his firm was only focused on personal planning, and this is still a major focus of theirs to this day. Today, he is going to speak with us on both sides of the coin, personal finance and business planning, but most importantly, about the ethos and philosophies of his company and why they exist in this world. Zak is a thought leader, an inspiration, and I am proud to call him a friend. So without further ado, it is my pleasure introducing everyone to the CEO of I Am Financial and the co-host of The Other Side of the Coin, Zak Smith. All right, Zak Smith, you, my friend, are officially a podcaster. How's it feel?
Been waiting all my life for this.
I know that you have. If you're listening, Zak sent me, there's an email that is, I don't know how long it is, with all the different ideas that Zak had for this podcast. And you're in for a treat because Zak is very thoughtful as a person. And in the industry, Zak, I really look up to you as a thought leader. So I'm honored that I get to host this show with you. And we were discussing what would be a really interesting way to start each conversation. And in my own podcast, I have a go-to question. In this one, I would like to know, what was your experience with finances, with money when you were growing up?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, glad to be co-hosting this with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. This episode, future episodes. My experience with finances growing up was probably different than most other people because like you have a background as a CPA, Mike, and my father was a CPA my entire life growing up. And I remember I was in middle school or high school and I was at a friend's house around the dinner table and the topic of money came up with the family. And everybody got very awkward and quiet, and it was like something that they didn't discuss, which was when I realized that, my upbringing was a little bit unique in the fact that my father was an accountant. We openly spoke about finances, at my dinner table. It was kind of like nothing to hide and family decisions and strategy behind why, he's making certain decisions. I remember, just last note on this, I remember my father, he always believed in the difference between good debt and bad debt. And this is like a lesson that I got at a very young age. And I remember my father and my mother always talking about paying off the mortgage early or not. And my mom always wanted to pay off the mortgage. And my father just couldn't bring himself to do it because it was at a low interest rate. And, I remember as a young kid kind of experiencing that.
Good debt and bad debt. How old are we talking? Like 5 years old, you're learning about good debt, bad debt, and having this openness.
It was probably around me then, but
That's so funny.
I was probably too focused on the Yankees still. I feel like it was like middle school, going into high school where it started becoming interesting to me and I started asking questions and learning. And it's funny, right? I mean, that was many years ago. And still I sit in meetings with clients and, similar conversations at times.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel like that has served you, that your parents were open about your finances? Because I know it feels very taboo in our culture. Like your experience at other families' dinner tables is, from my experience, it's very common. Like people don't talk, you don't talk about politics, we don't talk about money, things like that. And I would guess that it has been really helpful for you that you were open about money. So how has it served you or has it served you?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it, right? It was interesting to me. And I think that finances, and there's a lot of different areas in life and within finances, like credit scores, which have an impact on people. And I feel like they don't totally understand, why their credit score is where it is or how to improve upon it. Like it's very convoluted. And I think, my parents and my family openly discussing things like finances, I think it was super important, right? I have a family of my own now, and my wife and I Autumn and I, we plan on having a similar atmosphere in our household. And I think it's super important, right? Because eventually you get through with school and you start working and you make an income and it's such a huge part of our life. It's really inappropriate and unfortunate that people don't understand finances better, right? So I think the younger the earlier when it comes to, financial education.
Mm. I think another time, this won't be the focal point of this episode, but I would love to explore kind of the inner. There's a number on paper with money, right? That there's an amount that's there's your net worth that's on paper. You could pinpoint that down to the dollar, and then there's your internal relationship to money. Like, do you feel like you have enough? Are you coming from a place of scarcity? If that feels interesting to you to explore, we can. If not, maybe a different episode, because I want to get to the origin story of I Am Financial too. So which route do you want to go? What would you prefer?
I think I'll touch upon what you said very quickly, and then we can transition. The question that you're asking or that you're proposing, it's super accurate, right? There's a dollar figure that people have, and then there's kind of the relationship and mindset around money. And I always think about it kind of, I categorize it in two different ways. And it's something that you and I were actually talking about before the episode got started, before we started recording. It's almost like the difference between wealth and money. And I find that money, which is like a very finite resource, right? There's only so much money to go around, in the country, personally, and businesses. I mean, I guess the government can always print more money, but there's a limited amount of dollars. And to me, wealthy is a little bit of a different experience. I think that's more like a mindset and like understanding the strategies, for business owners having kind of like grit and, sacrifice, sometimes not paying themselves a salary when they're getting started. I think somebody can have a wealthy mindset and maybe the dollars just don't reflect yet, right? I think people can be in that situation. But it's even like another question, like if you give all the money to the wealthy, if you take all the money from the rich and give it to the poor, how long until the rich have it again? That's kind of like, wealth versus money. Money, can come and go. Wealth is harder to take away, I find.
It reminds me a lot of professional athletes and people who win the lottery, because they before they emerge into that field or stumbled upon the money, I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but a very large amount of them, because they haven't done the inner game around wealth and money, they eventually spend it all and lose it all, right? So and this actually I feel like is a good segue into I Am, because I think one of the things that makes you guys stand out, and I can speak by the way, listeners, I'm a client of theirs. I highly recommend. You guys are really good at the tactical and like what's in your bank account and what are the different strategies that can help you accumulate money. But there's also this element of what's your mindset and what's the life that you want and what does it mean to you to be wealthy. That are they're both really meaningful explorations. So I would love to bring it here now to the origin story of I Am Financial, that you and Mark, before it was a thriving business, you guys were in a little room together with just an idea and a vision. And could you talk to us about what that was like and what inspired you guys to get started?
Yeah, definitely. It's a story that, some people have probably heard, but not a story that I tell often. And it really is remarkable. I'm Financial, and we're pretty much entering our 14th year of being a firm. And, the arc of the company has definitely been interesting, and it definitely hasn't been a straight line. But the story that I, shared with you, Mike, is how our first office, right? And I'm calling from our current office right now. Our first office was the kind of like the back room, like the storage room in Mark's first condo that he ever bought for himself. It was the two of us on folding chairs and folding tables, and we would take phone calls outside of the room because you never quite knew when the boiler was going to kick in, right? Which was very loud. And, we knew that was temporary, and we did have a big vision. And, it was through, our father, who was a CPA, other relationships that we had in the business world and in the financial world. And through our journey and our experiences of, being at other firms and things like that, we were taught and, we were exposed to a different way of thinking and a different way of planning. The way that we always like to view it is on one end, you kind of have like elite strategies and mindset and true financial, holistic planning. And on the other side, you have what we call mainstream financial management. And we do think there's a big difference. One is really for the masses, and the other, to your point, it's about getting to know the person or the business and what they're actually trying to create, on a very customized level. So once we saw this difference on, thinking ahead, planning more thoughtfully, the difference between, public markets and private markets, private equities, private credits, alternative investments. I always like to ask the simple question of, what is somebody's retirement strategy? And, whether they're in their 20s or their 30s or their 40s or their 50s, the point is that if we don't have our retirement strategy now and today, then it's impossible to optimize our efficiency, right? You're almost like planning in the dark, not knowing how the story ends. So that's something that we see in the mainstream world, where it's more about just moving dollars into accounts and, letting it run with the market and things like that. More templated planning is how we like to look at it. So, with our journey, with our experience, with the strategies that we've learned over time on how the truly affluent individuals and families, these kind of like family office types of environments, how they were planning in their own life, we just felt like there is a better way. It does exist, right? And we kind of, we follow the academics and, PhDs who write about finances and retirement planning and business planning. And, we didn't have to recreate the wheel. We just had to put the pieces together. And, we're not the only ones who are doing it the right way. I do find that the majority are kind of more a part of that mass mentality, but we're not the only ones doing it the right way. What we did is we put the pieces together, and we thought that we could bring it together, and bring it forth to, people in our world, people in our circles, right? Not people making, 10, 20, $30 million a year, but being able to give the mindset, the strategies, the perspective, and the approach really to everybody else. That was really the vision when we first got started.
I'm sure there were in the beginning, and maybe still, there were lots of hard times, especially when it was just you and Mark, right? I'm sure that you guys were educating yourselves, you were working on your mindset, you were doing all the things that entrepreneurs do when they're hungry and getting started. And you're one of the most disciplined people I know. So I don't, when you commit to something, you usually make it happen. But I'm just wondering if you could bring us close to some of the challenges that you guys experienced early on, and how were you able to stick to your vision, your mission, the bigger picture when maybe the results weren't quite there yet? I think this actually ties a lot to, I was thinking when you were talking about people who like, what's your retirement plan? When I was 25 years old, that question would have made me recoil in horror, because I don't have a plan. And so it actually, I didn't confront it. I would keep hiding from it, hoping it would go away over time. And so in a way, when you answer this question, you're going to invite other people to like take those courageous steps forward when things are, maybe financially things aren't going well for them. So anyway, what was it like in those challenging times for you? What kept you going and evolving and learning?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, right? I think strong mindset is always a big part of it. And, there's a quote that I always like that has recurred throughout my life in a variety of different hard times. And I think it's more, pertaining to sports, but I've always looked at it as, a quote for life. And it's that essentially how when things are going well, right, when a team is winning, it's very easy to have high spirits and be in a good mood and happy and excited about life. But, people or teams, right, or businesses, the true character comes out when times are hard. So that for me carried a lot of weight. Like I said, there's been multiple different periods and points in my life where I, had a choice of staying focused with a strong mindset, wanting to, use whatever's happening as an opportunity and how can I learn from it, or going the other route, right? Which a lot of people go the other route too, the more negative route and, down in the dumps and, how am I going to rebound from this? That quote for me was just like an immediate recalibration. It kind of like forced me to look in the mirror and say, who do I want to be in a hard moment and how do I want to get out of this? And, what really helped also is being part of a great team. So like from day one, I always had Mark, my first partner, my older brother. So leaning on each other and, the support that we had around ourselves definitely helped get through some hard times. And then I think the final, mention that I'll make is having a vision that's, bigger than yourself, right? We're not the first people to feel that way. We're not going to be the last people to feel that way. But we're very passionate about what we do. We dedicate our life. We sacrifice, time away from our family, like many other people, right? That's not unique to us, but it is a big part of our life. And we didn't get into business purely, to make money, right? Something we even talk about with some of our clients is there's really two purposes as to why people work, right? And it's a beautiful thing when somebody has both of them. And those two things are passion and money, right? So a lot of the times, people just work for money and they might not even like their job. And other people who I, really look up to, they like don't care about the money. They're just, doing it all for passion. I think that's, unbelievable as well. I would say we're one of the lucky ones though, where we're passionate about what we do. It's serving a bigger purpose. We care about putting people into a stronger financial situation more than, how much money it means that we're making. And also, I mean, the monetary side is also important too. But so, having the vision be bigger than us also helped carry us through some of those times though.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. At one point you said you didn't reinvent the wheel. And something that I'm excited to dig into with you is just, I guess, getting a little bit closer to your philosophies, right? One thing that I appreciate a lot about what you guys have created at IM, and I love the way that you've synthesized so many different things that, I don't know, I feel like Mark is this walking encyclopedia. You, in a lot of ways, are an encyclopedia too, and you're both really good at nurturing relationships, at meeting people where they are. And I'm wondering what has inspired, like, where are you cherry picking from, pulling philosophies from? What has guided the way that you strategically operate as people and as a business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a lot of hard work, right? Because nowadays, I think everybody would agree, where we live in such a time where there's a lot of information, but not always a lot of wisdom. So it's very, time intensive and challenging to, figure out what is the best approach, what is the best trust strategy, right? What is the best retirement plan? What's the best way to exit or sell a company, right? Like there's so much information out there. Tying it together, it takes a lot of time and energy. But I think what's always helped us is having a really strong sounding board, and that, we don't go the route of taking people's opinions. So we go a very academic route, like I was saying before, following, PhDs in different areas, and it's becoming an encyclopedia to a certain extent, right? And that comes with experience. You go through a lot of these different scenarios, multiple times, and each time you learn something new, and each time it's a little different. But I think just always educating yourself. We still, a few weeks ago, I was in Denver at a conference, right? And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to Boston to a different conference. So, it's staying in the game. It's not just, getting complacent and sitting behind your computer and, just back-to-back meetings all day long, which is a good thing to do. But, it's also being really careful with your time and your calendar, right? And blocking out time chunks to give yourself the opportunity, to learn, to study, to research, to go to the conferences. So I think it's, a combination of all the above though.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I would add in here, and I'm keen to hear maybe you expound on this a little bit. One of the common through lines of everything has been that you, like you said, you and Mark had a sounding board. You guys had each other when times were really hard. I'm wondering how would you describe your relationship with, your brother. This is like, if you guys weren't able to navigate the successes, the challenges, the failures, to be able to trust each other, to have each other as the sounding board, all the strategy and all the best stuff in the world would everything that you'd be working towards, it would be pretty meaningless if you guys didn't have a good relationship with each other. So how would you describe your relationship with Mark, and how has that evolved over time with being in business together?
So yeah, there's like two different ways that I want to answer this. And I mean, how has it evolved being in business together is, it's hard to find two brothers who probably talk as often as we do because we're in business together. So our relationship just gets better and stronger and more open, and just it's been great. But two things about, the partnership, and we have other partners as well, right? And it's like having that team, to your point, having that support system and sounding board. Um, we believe, you're like you are the average of the five people you spend the most time with, right? And according to the Harvard Business Review, like spillover is a real thing, right? So like when you're working next to high performers, it's going to increase your performance as well, right? It's like when people ride bikes together and they get better times than, when they ride a bike alone, right? So it started out as me and Mark. Now, it's me, Mark, Zach, and Andy, as the partners of the firm. And, all of us just kind of pushing each other to be better and the best version of ourselves and holding each other accountable. I think that matters for everybody. To answer your question a little bit more directly, though, working with my brother for pretty much my entire career has been very interesting. And we have some family business clients as well, right? And what I've noticed is it's kind of the two ends, like the bookends. When it comes to family, I find it's usually the best thing or the worst thing for that family. You obviously, hear the horror stories, and, I've seen it go sour a couple of times. But I'm very grateful. I'm very fortunate to say, that's not our situation at all. And, like I said, it could be the best thing. For us, it's the best thing. I just trust him more than anybody, and I know him better than pretty much anybody. Mike, you and we always joke about it would be great if you had two of yourself, right? Because I want to be all in on the business. I want to be all in with my family. I want to be all in many areas of my life. I wish there was like more than one of me. And this is maybe the nicest compliment I can make, but this is like probably as close as you can get to something like that. Like that's how in sync the two of us are and how close we are.
I'm glad that your wish to have two of you is now out in the public for everyone to know. That's important.
Yes.
And it does feel like it's the closest you can get to as possible, right? It's to have a brother. And I would actually add that you guys really complement each other in a meaningful way too, that your skill sets are aligned, that your temperaments are very aligned. And you're both, there's this balance that I experience of being agreeable, but also not averse to challenging things or having conflict. And I think the tension of that is very important, especially as the company continues to grow and you're serving more people, and now you have employees working for you. So that's that foundation that you guys have. Was it? I guess actually another curiosity of mine, was it like that when you were younger? Did you guys get along well? Did you get closer over the years?
We definitely got closer over the years. We were always close. He was always a great big brother, older brother. He's 5 years older than me. So, when I was 10 and he was 15, or I was 5 and he was 10, a little bit of an age gap there. But I would say, every year we continue just to get closer and more in sync. We were super close as kids, though. We were both playing sports, and I was fortunate, I had a close, tight-knit family, which still to this day I do. But yeah, we've always been close, but this is like a different side of the brotherhood that we have, right? Not everybody's in business together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about a few more things about you and a few more things about the business. I think this will make for a really good, I'm having a blast. I don't know how it is on your end, but I'm loving this as an episode 1. So one curiosity of mine, you've been in business for 14 years. I can't believe that. I'm I'm sure that there have been there were expectations that you had, and in some ways, I'm sure the vision is exactly aligned with what you expected. Like there's a compass, there was a North Star that you were moving towards, and then there's all the things that happen in between that you couldn't possibly expect. I'm curious what have been some of the surprising learnings that you've had, or different successes along the way that you wouldn't have anticipated have been helpful, or like different levers that have been helpful that you didn't think would be helpful, things like that.
Yeah, I want to give it a little bit of thought. It's a good question. I thought of one example. I guess the two things that I can think of immediately, one is just the impact of coaching
Mm,
and kind of just being a like student first kind of mentality, growth mindset. I think I always had a growth mindset, but I think being in business and being in finance, I didn't really have a choice, right? Especially in the beginning, in the early years, right? I mean, you're still trying to grow a company. There's definitely extra stress. You're still questioning, can I do this forever? So for us, it was once again looking in the mirror and saying, where do we need to improve to, stay in this game and to grow a company and to, have this vision and to follow this vision to see it to fruition. So definitely just like the coaching world in general, like business development, personal development, business coaches, to us it's more about just the dollars and cents, like I was saying. So we always think about like different core values that we have in our life, and one of four or five, right, is business. So it's also, balancing it all. That has been
mhm,
a really interesting journey and something that I've learned on the way, just with everything that you want to do in life. And then the other aspect of it, the other part that I was going to mention that I guess was unexpected is, and maybe it's like a little cliche to even say, but I really do find that the hardest moments in life and like the losses in life, that's at least my experience has been that's when you learn the
mhm,
most.
mhm.
So I think rather than getting upset about it, to your point, like how have I evolved? Maybe when I was younger, I would get upset about certain things. And I think over time, I've really, I've learned to view everything like an opportunity. And just to paint a little bit of a picture, even, there's an analogy that I always have enjoyed about that. And it's when you think of a pendulum that swings back and forth, and the mindset around it is essentially if you don't swing to, a one, which, one out of 10, maybe one's the worst. If you don't swing to a one, then, a pendulum, you're not going to have enough force to swing to a 10. So it's kind of like saying going through those hard times and learning, that's what can kind of, bring you to the next level or, change you as a person in a positive way.
I'll buy you some time with this. But I think it'd be interesting if you have one of those 1 out of 10 moments of like it hurt really badly in the moment and couldn't possibly have felt like a win, that feels now like a very important lesson or a formative experience that you've grown from. I'd be very curious to hear that. But what I was, and now I've totally lost my thoughts, so maybe I won't buy you time. If you have an answer to that, I would love to hear right away. What I was going to say, actually, though, is that something that you're very skilled at that I want to make sure that you get some credit for here. I think that you and Mark both share this, is that I didn't become a client of yours until probably 5+ years after we initially met. And there was a way about you that was fundamentally of service and not transactional, right? That I would imagine is, I haven't met with too many other financial planners before, but it doesn't feel like an industry where people are nurturing relationships, genuinely curious about the people they're working with, genuinely of service. You would spend hours on the phone with me before I ever became a client. And as a result, I now happily have referred many people your way. So I think anyone who's listening, who's curious, like I'm in the early stages of an entrepreneurship journey with a coaching practice. In the beginning years, I haven't necessarily bared all of the fruit of the things that have been created and this is something that I actually have participated in. I've seen from your end of things that you planted the seeds and were really genuinely attuned to the planting of the seeds. They weren't just like, I need to meet 10 people today, so I checked off that box. At least that wasn't my experience. Like, you genuinely cared about meeting people. So there might be a hard moment in there somewhere of, man, I've met with so many people and none of it's paying off. I wanted to share my experience of that. I'm glad it came back after I lost it. So while I bought you that time, did anything else come up?
Yeah, and I think, what I was thinking of when you were telling that story, why are we like that? I mean, first of all, I think it matters who the person on the other side of the table is, right?
Mm.
But if it's a good person, and we believe in the person and, we can see that we can add value, there's actually a book that I like to reference called The Score Will Take Care of Itself by Bill Walsh and another co-writer. And I actually think Bill Walsh passed away before the book was finished, and then Bill Walsh Jr., his son, finished it or something like that. But, we believe in that mentality, right? If you're doing all the right things, if if you're giving more than you're receiving, and everything in between, right? Like we always believed in that score will take care of itself mentality. So, I think it's in like the fiduciary spirit of just like doing what's best for everybody, doing what's right for everybody. Yeah, I mean, that's just the camp that we subscribe to, right? Add value and the score will take care of itself. But for the hard times, I mean, I think of one professionally, I think of one personally. The personal one is a medical spout that I ran through, even though I'm all better now. And, maybe that could be like its own episode entirely, healthy people getting sick and the importance of financial planning. But, the other thing that I can think of professionally would be, there's this one company that when I think back on, I think we met them too early and we weren't as skilled or expert in what we do for the needs for their clients. And that was a really hard moment. But I think it was, a very valuable moment because I think we got a little bit even more dedicated and serious. And not that we weren't before, but it almost felt like a wasted opportunity. It was like we did such a good job to get in the position, but then it's like, it was almost like a AAA player going up to the majors, right? And maybe they weren't quite ready yet. So, there was positives and negatives to it, right? It was like impressive that we got ourselves in this great situation, but we just didn't have like the experience or the expertise yet. But, there's a colleague of mine who once said, if it takes, if you believe in 10,000 hours to become an expert at something, it's like, it might take somebody 5 years to do 10,000 hours, or it might take somebody 2 years to do 10,000 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of took that to heart and we just put our heads down and kept working hard. And then the next time the opportunity came, we were ready for it, right? So I guess that's really the moral of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'm guessing that coaching was able to support you through some of these times. And I think that this is an interesting, I love that as a business owner, you're open about talking about these things. I think that most of the highest success people are working with coaches. And I'm wondering what you most got out of it, especially in your first time working with a coach. How did it support you in leveling up as a person in your own personal development? And maybe how did that spill over into the business development?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things, and I actually think of Darren Hardy. You know who that is?
I don't think so, actually.
Darren Hardy has a couple of books, and I think he's the like head publisher for Success Magazine. And I think Jim Rohn, Jim Rohn?
I do know Jim
I
Rohn.
think he used to be like the head publisher or the director of Success Magazine, and now Darren Hardy, just to give you like perspective, like the kind of person that he is and like mindset and everything. And he tells a story on stage on how when he was trying to find the woman of his dreams and get married, the first time he was, trying and looking, he kind of wrote a list out of all the things that he would want in a spouse. and he had no success, right? He couldn't find that spouse. And then he ended up writing a second list, and the second list was, who do I have to be
Mm.
in order to attract that spouse? And he started working on himself and he started changing himself. And I would say that was my biggest takeaway when I was in my first coaching program. I went because I wanted to have a more successful business, but the outcome ended up being that I really need to work a lot on myself in order to have a successful business. And it was kind of like looking at my habits and, just my day-to-day schedule and my discipline. Yeah, that actually opened me up to the world of like meditation and even like yoga. And, it probably made me a lot more of a disciplined person. And it kind of goes back to, you're the average of the 5% people you spend the most time with, or the 10% spillover, where it's like once you start joining these coaching programs and organizations, or even, certain companies, once you are surrounded by other high performers, I think you just realize like what's possible, right? Like there's
Yeah.
been times in my life with sports, professionally, with exercise and fitness, where I thought I was doing a great job, or I thought like, how could somebody do more? And then you meet somebody who's doing so much more, and you're like, wow, my mindset was, not big enough. I didn't realize, how much more you can do in this area. So that was kind of my beginning journey of being in the coaching world and hiring coaches.
Yeah, right on. So, I mean, you can't possibly, in the time that we have left, get to all of it. But this question, I'm really moved by that example of making a list of all of the qualities you want in your partner. And then he made a list of, who do I need to be? In an out breath or two, what did you discover about who you needed to be to have a successful business?
I mean, maybe I'll think of a few more things along the way. I mean, number one to me was discipline, followed by accountability. Like they're almost on the same line. And also, you know, just having a bigger mindset, I would say, right? Like kind of like that 10x mentality. I think a lot of people, they can, be very busy but not productive. Happens to all of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think the more structured you are, the more calendar oriented you are, so like you're focusing on the most important items, I think it just helps recalibrate you more quickly to kind of like reflect on a day and say, was I doing the highest ticket items? Like, was I focusing on what I should be focusing on, or was I just like responding to emails all day?
Yeah.
Right. So, discipline and mindset and accountability, leadership. And then the one that I'm still working on, to be openly honest with you, is like taking care of yourself, right? Like putting the
Mm-hmm.
oxygen mask on yourself first. I definitely am juggling, many things in the air. So like, and that's something I'm always working on, right? Like making sure you're going to the gym, making sure you're eating right. And I'm probably being hard on myself. I'm probably not as bad, as in I just, once again, it's having that bigger mindset where it's like, I know, what's possible, and I'm all about kind of like fulfilling that potential. But yeah, I would say those are the biggest ticket items from the coaching.
All right. Well, this has already been a pretty jam-packed first 40 minutes, first conversation. I want to offer to you, is there anything that we haven't spoken about so far today that you think would be an interesting tie-in before we bring it towards the back end here?
I guess the one thing is I'll throw it back at you so that we can learn a little bit more about you before we wrap things up. And my question for you is, how has, coaching and, focusing on your finances, how has that all had an impact on, you and your life and the way that you view things?
Hmm. That's a big question to ask for a little bit of time. What's the 5 minutes or less version? How coaching has had an impact on me? I think the simplest thing I could say is it's helped me take responsibility over every domain of my life. That life isn't happening to me, that I am in the driver's seat in a lot of ways. So that means that I have a choice in how I show up in my intimate relationships, in my friendships, that I can navigate conflict in a more empowered way, that I can take a closer look at my relationship with money. I can get in touch with my deepest, innermost desires. I mean, before I ever worked with a coach, I very much felt I didn't think I had it in my DNA to be an entrepreneur. I felt like I'm too quiet, I'm too reserved. I have employee DNA. This was a story I told myself, and I don't feel that way at all. I really feel like I'm perfectly cut out to be an entrepreneur. I think differently. I march to the beat of my own drum, but without coaching or other means of self-discovery, I probably I would have painfully drifted through life thinking, believing in a disempowered way that this is just the way life is, instead of getting in touch with the way that I want to live my life. And that now has become in a lot of ways integrated with who I am as a professional, who I am in every area of my life. That every day I have really tough days. Don't get me wrong. Like I've had lots of tough days recently as I'm integrating getting back to work after being with my son on leave for a while. But that by and large, I wake up every morning and I look at each day as a possibility to create something special. And it doesn't need to be grandiose or majorly impactful to millions of people, but I feel like I can take responsibility for who I am, how I show up, and the impact that I'm having. And what a great gift that coaching has offered for me. And that's what drew me to be a coach in the first place. Like I love that I get the chance to have this impact on people, that someone might be showing up to me thinking they have employee DNA or that they're not enough or not good enough, whatever story they're carrying, that it's just a story that they're telling themselves. It's not who they really are. And like waking people up to who they really are can help them be the business person they want, be the partner, be everything that they want to be.
Yeah, I love that. I love the 100% ownership. I feel like that's so key. I feel like it's human nature, whatever's happening right now, whatever's happening in the world right now, whatever's happening in, the economy right now, whatever's happening in my life right now. It's so easy to feel like, that's just the way it's going to be. When times are good, they're always going to be good. When times are bad, they're always going to be bad. But we know that's not how life is. So, reminding ourselves of, that we have ownership of, the life that we're creating, I think it can help people kind of take that next step to make a change.
Mm-hmm. And in coaching language, the distinction is at the effect of and at choice, or like victim consciousness and maybe empowered consciousness. So thanks for kicking it back to me. I love answering these types of questions too. That's why I ask them, because they're fun. I have a couple of like quick hitter things that would be fun to do it as a tie-in before I ask the final question.
Okay.
What is one thing, so someone that's listening to this episode, what do you feel like is the most important thing that you'd want the listener right now to know about you or the business I am?
I think it would be to not follow all the hype. Kind of like what I was saying before, there's a lot of information out there, but not a lot of wisdom. I think that in finances, people, they think that, picking the hot stock or,
I was just going to say something about that.
It's gonna cure everything, right? Like all of a sudden you don't have any financial stresses. All of a sudden, you could pay your bills, and all of a sudden, you have no like relationship issues, and it's like that's not how it works. I feel like that's almost how it's like advertised. And for people to just, take a little bit more of an academic approach and to slow down and look around and, look for the support, look for the advice. But at the end of the day, like start, the difference between being wealthy and having money, it's like start building that wealthy environment. It's more than just, like picking the hot stock. So, start, looking at cash flow and start, you know, working with the building blocks to create the space for you to be successful, right? It kind of goes back to the lotto curse, like you said, Mike. Like sometimes people are suddenly wealthy given $50 million and they're in a worse spot than they started a few years later, right? So it's about creating like a wealthy environment.
Well, to that end, you did mention a couple of books. So we have The Score Will Take Care of Itself. Maybe I'm forgetting one, but is there another book that you would, if a client came to you and said just one book that you'd recommend for personal finances, does something come to mind?
For personal finances, there's two books that come to mind. One is a little bit more like strategic and advanced, and I'm going to intentionally omit that one. And the other book, because if it was like, one book, everybody should read it. I think it should be about the mindset around money. So that book, I would recommend The Psychology of Money. I think it's written by Morgan Housel. I think that's his
right.
name.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a great first book for people to read when it comes to, wanting to get a better education around money. I think it really explains like the mindset around money more than anything else. And I always think, you want to start with mindset first. You want to have an understanding and an approach. And then, volume two, the more advanced one, the strategies come after you have like the right mindset and way of thinking about it.
Awesome. All right, Zach. Well, the final question now that we're going to be doing in this little interview series that we do here. Let's dive in. What does it mean to you to be wealthy?
Yeah, so I think it's more than just money, right? And I'm curious to hear what other guests will say, as we ask more people this question. But, to me, it really is about having a well-rounded life. So I think that is like health and relationships and family. And I think money is one of those things, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's definitely of emphasis in most people's lives. But to me, if you have all the money in the world, I don't think that makes a happy person, right? So, I've actually heard it before, if there's a 95-year-old billionaire, would you switch places with them today? And most people are going to say no because of longevity, right? Like you wouldn't give up your youth, to become 95 and a billionaire. There's more to life than just money, but, using money as a tool and, we all work so hard. So kind of like maximizing your potential and being efficient with your money. I think that's one part of it, but you need to fill up all the tires, of the car to be truly wealthy.
Awesome, Zach. Well, thank you for joining me for the first episode of The Other Side of the Coin. Feels really nice to step into a different podcast, and you are a natural and a pro, my friend. So lots of good nuggets for everyone who's tuned in here to leave with, and to everyone who's listening, really appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining, and stay tuned for many more. We've got lots of great stuff cooking for future episodes. And anything, Zach, that you want to say as a sign off here?
No, this was great. This was so much fun. Thank you to Mike Trugman for, steering the ship, and really excited to, bring the partners onto the podcast and to start interviewing other people, whether they're clients or colleagues or, professional, alliances. And we're just going to keep learning. Today was more about the origin, but in the future episodes, we're going to just keep learning about different approaches to finances and business and life. So I'm just really excited. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the first episode.
Likewise. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Hi, everybody. This is Zak Smith, co-founder and CEO of I Am Financial and the co-host of The Other Side of the Coin. Please remember to subscribe and like, and if you have any questions and or would like to speak, please feel free to email me directly at zaksmith@im-financial.com. That is ZAK Smith at the letter I, the letter M-financial.com. Reach out to us and we will make certain to get you to the appropriate channels. Thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed our show. See you next time. Disclosures. This podcast is for informational purpose only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and the firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, Northeast Financial Network, and I Am Financial, and the opinions stated are their own.
Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, and accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. OSJ address is 101 Crawford's Corner Road, Suite 2405 in Holmdel, New Jersey, 07733. Their phone number is 908-709-0020. Our phone number is 914-603-8325. A member of the Northeast Financial Network, financial representative of Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, New York, New York, I Am Financial, and Northeast Financial Network are not affiliates or subsidiaries of Guardian. Arkansas license number 163038838, California license number 4108463.
No compensation was paid to this client for their testimonial. Their experience may not represent the experience of others, nor predict the future. We hope you enjoyed the other side of the coin.